So when you make 100, again, even though it's obviously a bigger number and more complex, you want to keep it still, keep it with this sort of concept of start off introducing it in a concrete way, sort of scaffold, so you can work more into the abstract, okay? So the first thing you want to do is remember, we talked about how making 10 was really, really important. Then we showed when we made 20 how important was it they had that solid foundation of 10. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on 100. And before we work on 100, we want to make sure that they can go ahead and that they have that solid foundation and that linkage to 10. So what you can do, you can go ahead and take 100 abacus right here. And all we're doing right now is we're going to say, all right, let's take a look at the different numbers that we have gone with, okay? So if we take a look here, we know that this is 70 right there. And if that's 70, this would be 30. So if 70 and 30 make a 100, which it does, what's the connection to 10 then? And your students will probably pretty quickly understand, oh, 70 and 30 makes 100, 7 and 10 makes 10. All right, and then you could go ahead and say, all right, let's do another one. And you could go ahead and build it this way and say, okay, now what we have over here is we have 80. So let me find 80. Oh, I have 80 right here. And what goes with 80 to make 100? And that would be 20. So you can go ahead and you can introduce it that way. And then what you'll want to do after that is, it's awesome if all the numbers we're making are just 100, but then you can go ahead and say, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to chunk it off here like this, all right? So we'll go ahead and we'll cover these up now. So now we can say, okay, what number do we have here? And we know that this is the number 54. So let's go ahead and we'll build 54 right here. And we'll use our arrow cards, and we know that that's 54, okay? So our question is, as we look at it, okay, 54, how much do we need to get to the next 10? Well, we know what goes with 4 to make the next 10 would be 6, right? So our ones are going to be 6. And then once we get to the next 10 would be 60, right? So if we're at 60, then 60 to 100 would be how much? And it would be 40. So our answer would be 46. Okay, and that's another way that you can do it. Again, starting off with working the decade 10, then working through, you know, the next 10 or the next way to do it. All right, another way that you can do it, and this is just a little bit more concrete, would be working just the numbers like this, okay? Remember, starting off with the decades first. Okay, if this is 40, what would that missing number be? And we know that it would be 60. You know, if the missing number, say, is 30, right? If this is 30, 30 to 100, what would it be? And then again, what you can do is you can work with numbers that are not a decade number. So say we have 77. Again, the same type of thinking. How much do we need to get to the next 10? And it would be 3. And that next 10 will get us to 80. Then 80 to 100 would be 20, so it would be 23. So this is the same concept as using the 100, that 100 abacus. It's just this is a more concrete way. And again, starting off with the decades and then having them sort of finish off that decade number and then working their way through 100. Another thing that you can do is you can go ahead and you can use a 100 grid. And you can say, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to chunk it off. So we'll go ahead and we'll build this like this. And again, the question is, okay, if we have 44, right? How much would we need to get to the next 10? Well, if that's 44, we would need 6 to get to the next 10, which would get us to 6 to get us to the next 10, which would be 50, and then 50 to 100, so it would be 56. So again, just using many different ways to have them work on it and many different ways to have them practice it, see it, experience it. And then finally, having your students work in a manner like this too. Again, 38, and these are part of your materials as well. If you have 38, how much to get to the next 10? We know that would be 2, which gets us to 40. And then 40 to 100 be how much? It would be 60. So again, taking them through, it's not just, a lot of times we think like solve it algebraically, you know, subtract what you have. Like that's like algebraic rules, and we're trying to build up their numeracy, their mental math when doing this, so that's why we would work at it that way. Then the final way too is, remember, it's not just about solving missing numbers to 100. So you can go ahead and there's these two different methods that you can use, and one is called the jumping method, one is called the splitting method, okay? And the first one is just right here. If you go 57, and basically what they're doing is they're counting their way up to 70, so they're going 57, 67. Now if you go to 77, it's too much, so 67, then count your way through. This one follows sort of the same way too. It's saying, okay, 57 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 to 2. Remember, this is not meant to be done mentally. There's a reason there's a number line here, and so they would go ahead and you'd have them use the number line. This is actually something where they're showing their thinking and they're drawing it out, and it's, you know, they're using that numeracy. And then the last way, or last thing that you could do is, again, this goes back to using arrow cards, is you could go ahead and have build a number like, you know, we could say 65 plus a number equals 100. So what we want to do is we're trying to figure out right here what that number would be, what that missing number is. And remember, we're at 65. Well, how much to get to the next 10? That would be 5, which will get us to 70, and then 70 to 100 would be 30. So having them work it out that way as well. And it's good to go to use the arrow cards, because you can always break it off and say, okay, we have 60. Now, what do we need to get the next 10? We need another 5 to go here. So you can also break it off, and then when we get into, you know, multi-digit addition, subtraction with different methods, they'll be used to seeing these cards too, because these cards can be really beneficial when you're working on adding larger and smaller numbers.